Hello and good morning or good afternoon. Welcome to our Ratings Unification webinar from Charity Navigator. This webinar is targeted at Encompass rated organizations, and we'll be going over all of the changes that are going to happen in the next few months in advance of the giving season. Next slide. First, I want to introduce myself. My name's Laura Andes, and I'm the Chief Program Officer here at Charity Navigator. I'm here with two of my colleagues, Dr. Leah Prince, the VP of Impact Ratings, and Bilal Taylor, the VP of Leadership and Community. Today, we're going to give an overview of the upcoming unification of our two rating systems, including an overview of all of our various beacons, and talk to you at the end a bit about how to make the most of your ratings. Next slide. This year, we are going to release a single unified rating system. For those of you who have been following Charity Navigator's journey, you might notice that for the last 2 years, we have actually had two parallel rating systems. We've had our historic star-rated system, which targeted some of the largest charities in the country, the largest 9,000, and that focused on finance, accountability, and transparency metrics. In 2000, we launched a parallel system, which we call the Encompass rating system, that brought into our fold 200,000 smaller nonprofits under a more comprehensive system. They were scored differently and on a wider variety of metrics. And we were experimenting with that system to understand what worked and what didn't. Based on the last 2 years, we are now unifying those two systems. And I'll go over exactly what that means in a few slides. Next slide. So as I said, this brings it together, the STAR and the Encompass rating systems together. So now all organizations, regardless of if they have been rated in the past under Charity Navigator or their size, will be scored and rated exactly the same way. Go ahead. So what's new? Next slide. The key thing is now all organizations will receive the 0 to 4-star ratings. Encompass rated organizations historically had a 0 to 100-point score, with 75 being considered passing. So if you're an Encompass rated organization, you might be familiar with logging on to see your Charity Navigator profile and seeing a 97 or a 65 or whatever. Those will now become 0 to 4-star ratings in alignment with our historic star rating system. We found that our donors just really like the 0 to 4-star rating, and it communicates the correct level of precision and is super easily understandable. So no longer will you have sort of this parallel system where some organizations are rated under the 0 to 4-star, and they can say they're a 4-star Charity Navigator system, while Encompass might say, oh, I'm a 76 on Charity Navigator. Everybody will be rated on that 0 to 4-star scale. Next slide. So what will remain the same? For Encompass rated organizations, a lot will remain the same. First of all, you'll still be rated under 4 different assessment domains known as beacons. My colleagues and I are going to talk about each beacon individually later on. But for the most part, you should remember that finance and accountability, leadership and adaptability, culture and community, and impact and results are our 4 beacons. And we feel these 4 beacons together tell a very comprehensive picture of a nonprofit's trustworthiness and performance. And so now we're going to continue to have those 4 beacons available to you. Many of you might only have 1 beacon scored. Other of you might have 3 or 4 beacons scored. But they're all going to be available so you can have a more robust way of being rated, and we hope a more robust way of telling your story to the donor audience. Next slide. The 4 beacons will create an aggregated score. So each have a different weight that I'll talk about in a second. And depending on how many beacons you've earned, those different beacon scores will be aggregated and weighted to create an ultimate score. That score will still continue to be a 0 to 100 score, but that 0 to 100 score will then be translated into the ultimate score of a star rating. So your overall score will have be a star score, but underneath each beacon will have its own individual score that will roll up together. Earning beacons at this point is not mandatory. However, we strongly recommend you look at which beacons you can earn in your system, in our system, because that's going to boost your overall rating in the unified system and potentially increase your visibility on the platform. Next slide. As I said, those beacons are weighted, and the weighting of the beacon will depend on the number of beacons you've earned. At this point, we're not punishing you if you don't have a beacon earned. It will just be excluded from your overall score. So let's take two examples. If you're a nonprofit that has earned all 4 beacons, they're going to be weighted as follows. Impact and results, because we feel like that is, at the end of the day, the most important thing. That is your mission. That's what you're trying to do. That score will comprise 50% of your total score. Finance and accountability will be 32.5. Culture and community will be 10%. And leadership and adaptability will be 7.5%. Well, what happens if you don't have an impact score? And we'll talk about how that's got more limited eligibility than some of the other beacons. Then the weighting will be as followed. 80% will still be based on your finance and accountability score, and 10% will be, respectively, will be leadership and adaptability. So as you can see, we're not punishing you for not having all 4 beacons. We're just adjusting the weighting accordingly. However, we really encourage you to try to earn as many beacons as you can. As I said, we are going to use them to bolster how you might appear on our website. And if you want to see other permutations of the weighting, you can visit the Encompass site at charitynavigator.org, and we actually have a tool where you can look at the weighting depending on which beacons you've earned. Next slide. So what impact will this have? Next slide. We really think that bringing these two systems together with this holistic 4-beacon system and the overarching 0 to 4-star rating will really make it easier for nonprofits and donors to, next slide, to tell their story. So donors now can find and compare and support nonprofits. You don't have the situation we've had for the last 2 years where if you're an Encompass rated organization and maybe you're doing great work, but there's a very large established nonprofit also in your space, that the donor wouldn't look at you and say, huh, this is a 97, but this is a 4-star. Oh, I'm gonna give to the 4-star charity. Now everyone will get a star rating. It'll be easier for compare. And I think it will be better for you as potentially smaller nonprofits to, you know, compare against some of the larger, more established nonprofits that we had historically rated. Second, you'll be able to engage with the ratings process, communicate better. People know what a 0 to 4-star rating means from Charity Navigator. And we just think this will help you sort of raise your profile with your donors, you know, and hopefully improve your fundraising. And it'll also give you a sense, looking at the beacons, to benchmark yourself against other organizations. How are other organizations doing in your sector? And you'll be able to, you know, explore the ratings and see that. So we think that this is a real win-win for all of the stakeholders in our rating system. And we hope that just the whole sector will benefit from this. Next slide. So now I'm going to dive in a little bit to the finance and accountability beacon. Next slide. The finance and accountability beacon is not changing in this merger. And it's based wholly on the 990 that you have filed with the IRS. So there's no changes to the metrics on this. So if you look today and you've looked at what the finance and accountability is scoring on, there's no changes. And your current F&A beacon score should be the same unless we receive and process a newer 990 from the IRS in the next couple of months before our October unification. Let me put an asterisk there that we know that this has been a very hard few years. And for many organizations, your 2020 or even your 2020-990, for whatever reason, might just look very different than business as usual. And if that was your rating was based on that, it would really harm you. So we've created a process that when you log into our portal, you can fill out a form and say, you know, we think our 990 is very different. You know, typically we look like this, and we had to shut down for 6 months, so our program expenses are all off kilter. You can fill out the form and it will be temporarily excluded from your score. So I really want to make sure everyone knows about this option. We don't want the unique circumstances of the last 2 years to harm you. Next slide. So what should you do now? Again, continue to electronically file your Form 990 with the IRS. Let me acknowledge, some of you might go to your site and see an outdated 990 on there. And we will say that the IRS has also struggled keeping up during the pandemic. And so there's been delays with us getting the 990s from the IRS. Fairly soon within our portal, we're going to offer the opportunity for you to directly submit your 990 to us. So if that's the case for you, please check back regularly and be prepared to give us your more recent 990s along with proof of filing, and we'll be able to update your information if we haven't received it from the IRS. And again, I really encourage you, if you think that the pandemic, your finances just were different due to the pandemic, and having those calculated in your score would harm you, I really encourage you to complete the pandemic response survey also in our nonprofit portal. And we'll talk more about the nonprofit portal later. All right, next slide. Now I'm going to turn it over to Leah Prince, who's going to talk a little bit more about our impact and results beacon.
Thanks, Laura, and good morning or good afternoon. We're thrilled to see so many representatives from our Encompass nonprofit organizations attending this webinar today. As Laura mentioned, I am the Vice President of the Impact and Results Beacon here at Charity Navigator, and I'm going to spend a few minutes today telling you a little bit about what you need to know about impact and results. So let's jump right in. At Impact and Results, what we aim to do is measure how much your organization achieves relative to the cost required. So to do this, we create cost effectiveness assessment methodologies, and we do this program by program on a program level basis. And what this does is this allows our donors to compare the impact of organizations within a specific program area. Once we have these methodologies created, to assign an impact rating, we compare the assessment on cost effectiveness to broad benchmarks. And we then determine whether the program was a good use of resources given the next viable alternative. So over to the right on this slide, you can see some of the programs that are currently eligible for a rating. And I think, as Laura mentioned, Impact and Results is a methodologically more rigorous beacon than some of the other beacons, and so it's slower to ramp up in terms of eligibility. So currently we have limited scope on programs that are available. We are working on growing and evolving the scope, and we hope to expand our eligibility so that more and more organizations are able to receive an impact rating. I want to emphasize, as Laura mentioned, that if you are not eligible for an impact rating, you absolutely will not be docked on your Encompass score if you don't have an impact rating. And as Laura mentioned, again, you can go to the tool on Charity Navigator to determine how the other beacons will fill out the total score to get you to 100. So what should you do now? Next slide. If you haven't already, please go to the Charity Navigator nonprofit portal and sign up. From there, you can determine if an assessment methodology has already been developed for a program, which is run by your organization, and then if you're eligible to submit data for that program. I want to note that we do require that the program comprises at least 15% of your organization's total programmatic costs. At this time, we're only allowing an organization to be rated on one program that we have a methodology for. If you're not operating a program for which we currently have a methodology, you'll see a prompt to submit a request for one of our analysts to begin working on your program area. We are aiming to allow organizations to enter data for multiple programs starting in 2023. So if you are eligible to enter data, what you do is you just go in and you complete the impact and results questionnaire. Your data will assist our team in providing a rating for your organization. I'll end with one note of encouragement, and that is to please hop onto the nonprofit portal sooner rather than later. And there are two reasons for that related to the impact and results beacon specifically. The first is that, as I mentioned, our methodology is slightly more rigorous. So our analysts spend a lot of time doing quality assurance, and sometimes we can resolve flags in 24 or 48 hours, but other times it takes some back and forth with the nonprofit organization to really make sure that the data entered are correct. Second, while we don't ask you to enter a whole lot of data for this beacon, we do ask you to enter very specific data. And so we found that representatives who enter the portal often have to use our feature, which allows you to save your work and revisit the portal later, to actually save the work and then go and speak with other folks in the organization or consult your financials to make sure that you really get those data points correct. So again, please hop onto the portal before the deadlines that Laura will discuss, and see if you're eligible for an impact rating. And with that, I will thank you again for joining us, and I will hand the microphone off to my colleague Bilal, who will tell you a little bit about our culture and community and leadership and adaptability beacons.
Thank you very much, Leah. First, I want to echo my colleagues' welcome to you today. It's really exciting to see all the folks on the line and to have this conversation about Encompass, the Encompass rating system. My name is Bilal Taylor. I'm the Vice President of Culture and Leadership, which means I have the grand opportunity to talk about two different beacons today. First of those will be culture and community, and then we'll talk a little bit about leadership and adaptability. As for culture and community, this beacon really gives us a chance to assess the manner in which organizations and nonprofits engage with staff up and down the line, from entry-level staff up to the board, as well as engage the persons that you work with and for to achieve your mission, and sort of in a total positive organizational culture and set of relationships with community. And we can unpack a little bit about what that means around two assessments that we have. The first of those assessments is constituent feedback. Constituent feedback assesses the extent to which organizations engage with constituents inside of the organization as well as community, and then use the feedback that we get from those engagements to improve upon programs. The second of those assessments is diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. And this assessment looks at the extent to which organizations put equity into practice in their internal operations and programming, such that belonging is increased among staff, and also that equitable outcomes, whatever those outcomes are for each individual organization, are pursued with communities. When we're looking at these two, we'll move on to what you should do now. Next slide. So how do you fill out those beacons and how do you achieve them? One note is that Laura had showed you the sort of graph, the chart that looks at the overall weighting of beacons. When both of these, if all four beacons are there and you have both a constituent feedback and a DEI rating. DEI will count for 7% of your rating, whereas constituent feedback would be 3%. And in the case that only one is present, they would equal 5% of your overall rating. What you can do right now, what I hope you will do right now, as soon as you can, is to go to our partners at Candid to fill out the 2 instruments that we use to presently populate the ratings for each of those assessments. The first of those, How We Listen, is part of your How We Listen the How We Listen tab in your nonprofit profile with Candid. This again looks at the set of practices that your organization uses to engage constituents, how you use that feedback from constituents to improve practice, and really help you tab any challenges that you may have along the way, which gives an opportunity for refining those practices. The second piece that can be filled out through Candid is the Equity Strategy Survey. This is under the demographic section of your profile in Candid. So you begin with an overall demographic scan of the composition of board, the leader of an organization, as well as senior leadership. And then you move on to a 14-item checklist that looks at the equitable policies and practices that are standard in the field for how we can provide for equity within our organizations. And again, the data that you enter into Candid will be used to update your organization's Charity, Navigator, Culture, and Community Score prior to the next release, which will be in October. So I do encourage you to go ahead and fill this out as soon as you can. And why don't we move on to Leadership and Adaptability then? The Leadership and Adaptability Beacon broadly looks at the adaptive leadership practices that an organization has in place that allow it to continue to do its mission, even in light of external or internal changes or shocks. I think when Laura mentioned the pandemic, that's obviously one. When leaders leave, etc. So we understand there's a range of opportunities and challenges that exist for organizations that are nimble and flexible. More specifically, going into this beacon, we look at 3 areas of this work. One is strategy. So what are the actual strategies that an organization has in place? We know there's a mission and vision. We could pick those up from the website. But is there a strategic plan that's being operated on would be one example there. Besides strategy, we move on to leadership. Leadership looks at the extent to which leaders are developed across an organization, and then how are those leaders deployed to achieve mission in tangible ways. And across these assessments, you'll have opportunities to talk a little bit about how you make this work and go under the hood of a little bit around how you achieve your goals at your organization. And finally, we look at the adaptive nature of the organization. So we give an opportunity for organizations to talk to us a little bit about a challenge internally, externally that you may have responded to within your organization. We also give you a chance to share with us a little bit. So if you have an annual report, etc., this provides you a chance to upload that and talk to us about your work and what you should do now. If we go to the next slide. So again, this assessment is actually captured in our nonprofit portal. So we talked about the nonprofit portal a little bit earlier, but there you can go and fill out the Leadership and Adaptability questionnaire, which has the 3 sections I mentioned. And if you complete those, you will receive 100 points at this time under the Leadership and Adaptability Beacon. And similarly, when we have the next release in October, if you go out and do that now, you'll have a chance to receive or update your Leadership and Adaptability Beacon in our October release. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Laura.
So I'm seeing a lot of questions come in the chat about where to submit your data, how to submit your data. So let me try to answer that here. Next slide. So we do have a nonprofit portal, and you can see the website there. And I'm going to pause for a second so that you can all pull it up. And if you haven't registered, I'd really encourage you to go and register yourself now. Once you go in there, there's tons of really useful information in there. First, you'll be able to see a preview score of what your score is going to be based on any new data we provided in a couple of weeks, so not today. 2, you'll be able to provide data on impact and results and leadership and adaptability. And for those of you who have asked where the pandemic survey is, you can also find it in there. This is a place where, as we fill out our beacon, and I hope you bookmark it and visit it again, this is where you'll kind of get all the information in the long run about, you know, what data you can submit, what your score might look like, and any other resources we have. So again, today, log in there today, sign up if you haven't already done that, and then see if you're eligible for the Impact and Results Beacon, and complete the Leadership and Adaptability Beacon, and also complete the Pandemic Response Beacon. Next slide. Also in there is a link to Candid. You can also go to Candid directly, but we actually have a data sharing agreement with Candid. And the Candid data is what completes our Culture and Community Beacon. So log into our portal, then take the link over to Candid. And if you haven't already done so, complete the How We Listen section and the Demographics section of your Candid profile. And we get data sharing. They give us data a couple of times a year, and we'll be using that to update the data that is in there currently for the October, for when we update your scores in October. So 3 things: log into the portal, complete the LNA, check your impact and results eligibility and complete that, complete the pandemic survey if you're able to, and then go over to GuideStar. Next slide. So here are some important dates to remember. We know that the giving season is really important to you. For many of you, that might be when you make all of your individual donations for the year, the big bulk. So we are trying to get everything, get all the data processed and new ratings up by late October. You'll also see, we didn't talk about it very much, we're doing a whole brand refresh. The whole website will look different, be more navigatable, better search, etc., so that people can really find your nonprofits and explore causes that they care about. So working backwards, in late October, you're going to see new ratings published based on whatever data we have on you, and a new website launch with this unified rating system. However, we need a little bit of time to process any data received. So October 3rd, at this point, we might push that back, but let's say October 3rd for the moment, is the last data update on any information in Candid and in the nonprofit portal for the giving season. So we encourage you now to log into the portal and complete any data you can, and then check back in early September, because whatever data we've gotten sort of between now and early September, we'll use to generate a preview so you can see what your beacon scores are and how that translates to the 0 to 4-star rating. So really encourage you to submit whatever data you have so your preview is as accurate as possible. Let me make a caveat. Let's say you log in on September 15th and you realize you haven't done the leadership and adaptability and you want to boost your score a little bit by completing that data. You still can. We are not sophisticated enough where your profile will be, or your preview score will automatically update. We hope to get that functionality in the future, so you won't see any immediate change in your preview score, but when we publish your rating, you will see that new data reflected in your score. So again, I really encourage you to log in now to the portal, register if you haven't done so, and complete as much as you can. So when you log in and see that preview score in a couple of weeks, it will be as accurate as possible. Next slide. And then also in the nonprofit portal, if your preview score seems accurate, you can download your seals. And this is actually what the new ratings are going to look like. So you can see 3-star and 4-star. And so you can use that seal to really gain the trust of current and prospective supporters. All 3- and 4-star rated nonprofits will have access to the seals that they can use on their website and in marketing materials and fundraising. And I think that this is just a great way to make you stand out, to show like, not only are you doing great work that you're telling your donors about, but you're also a highly rated charity navigator, highly rated on Charity Navigator. A lot of donors really look for that. Next slide. So here are some ideas on how to make the most of your ratings. Again, log into the portal. This is a reoccurring theme. Log into the portal and download the ratings toolkit, which will have your seals. Use those to send in an email to your supporters announcing your organization's new rating. Post on social media, especially during the giving season. Include seals at key moments of conversion, the point at which a recipient of your marketing message performs the action you want to take, i.e. online donation form, direct mail, etc. I think you're probably on this webinar because you already know the power of these ratings. So I just really encourage you to leverage them as much as possible. Next slide. So here are your to-dos. Log into the portal today. If you haven't registered, the link is there, charitynavigator.org/portal. Submit your leadership and adaptability information and your impact and results data if you're eligible. Also on there is the pandemic survey if that applies to you. Log into Candid. You can do it directly from the portal and complete your profile. And then check your new rating in September and download your ratings toolkit and share your rating during the giving season. You know, doing all these things will really bolster your rating on your site and make you easier to find and just improve your overall profile. Next slide. So where can you learn more? We have, go ahead, next slide. We have several blog posts that are relevant on this merger. Keep a look at our site. You'll see the brand refresh at the end of the month, or end of October with our new website, which will have great information on our methodology. And just check your email. We'll be sending out lots of emails and information over the coming weeks or months. So now I think is the time when we will turn to questions. I know we've got tons of great questions in the chat, so we'll try to take the back half of the hour to go through them, and feel free to keep submitting them if you haven't already done so. So Stacy, do you want to go ahead?
Sure,
and thank
absolutely.
you very much for listening so far, everyone.
So thanks, everyone. My name is Stacy Steele. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications. A lot of you have had a lot of questions during this broadcast. As Laura just mentioned, we'll use the last remaining kind of like 25 minutes to try to get through them all. If your question is not answered and you have some specific questions related to your organization and you're Encompass rated or star rated, if you happen to be on this broadcast, you can reach out to info@charitynavigator.org. So with that, well, let's go to our first question. First question, will they, meaning our beacons, will the beacons have equal weight in the ratings?
So they will not, and Crystal, I don't know if you can find that slide. It depends on which beacons you've earned. But they are very differently weighted. So I'll just review that quickly in case you missed that. If you have all 4 beacons, 50% will be impact and results, 32.5 will be finance and accountability, 10% for culture and community, and 7.5 for leadership and adaptability. However, those weights really vary based on how many beacons you earned. So I really encourage you to go to www.charitynavigator.org/encompass. And if you scroll down, you'll see a little tool and you can click which beacons you have and see how their weighting changes. So we don't think all beacons are equal at this point, so their weighting reflects that.
Our next question, how does the combined rating system impact nonprofits that already receive a star rating?
That is a great question. We did do a webinar just for star rated, so you might want to check that out because we added a lot more information that was specific to them. The main thing is you're going to be rated on all 4 beacons, so those beacons will start counting. And in the short run, your star score will become your F&A score and pulled into the weighting system. And so that's what will look like in October. But I really encourage you to go ahead and watch some of the past webinars that were for just star rated charities, because there'll be a lot more information specific to that process. Stacy, are there other questions?
Okay, so Here we go. Will it be easy for donors to focus only on charities reporting impact and results metrics?
I'm not sure that I entirely understand the question, but I'll take a stab at this one. I believe what the person is asking is about our search features, and I'll report that in our updated website, which is fabulous, which will be launching in October, our search features will be greatly improved. So you should be able to look at organizations that have ratings on certain beacons, including impact and results.
Yes, and that is the truth. We will have greater search functionality. If you're familiar with our current search, it is fairly limited. Obviously, if you go on charitynavigator.org and you're looking, and donors are looking for a specific charity, obviously, if they have the name or the employer identification number of the charity, you know, that's pretty cut and dry. But obviously, if they're kind of doing a general search, obviously, they can drill down in terms of location, like city, state, zip, also cause area and category, but we will be improving the search functionality so that donors have just a much wider variety of nonprofits in order to look at. At present, you know, our search functionality is heavy on the star rated charities, although when you do search, you can get Encompass rated charities also, but with the unification of both rating systems, this will be greatly improved. So this will benefit not only donors, but also, again, nonprofits. And the more data that you submit to us and actually have more beacons lit, you will become higher up on, you could potentially come higher up in the search results. We have another question. Does our fiscal year 2020 Form 990 matter after our fiscal year 2021 990 unification in October?
This is a really good question, and I think is a detail that we glossed over, so I'm glad someone asked it. Your scores are based on your past 3 990s because we want, you know, if you take a step back, we know 1 or 2 years could be an outlier, and so we want to give you a chance to kind of smooth and see what the typical 990 looks like. So until we get well past the pandemic, that 2020 would still be part of that 3-year average. So by telling us that you don't want it included, then we would just take 2021, 1918. Does that make sense? So that we would sort of say that's a wild outlier due to the pandemic. So here is, we'll use a different set of 3. I hope that answers your question. And for those of you who really want to dig into the methodology, I really, really encourage you to go to our website. We're very transparent about how everything's calculated. And you can click on Encompass methodology and see all the details you want.
Thanks, Laura. There's another question. Will you still require audited financials to get a passing finance score? Audits cost $10,000 to $20,000, which is out of reach for small nonprofits like ours.
So I'm going to reach you guys at so the audit is 20 points out of 100. So you can, passing is 75, so it's not required to pass if you have an audit, but we do have thresholds. So organizations with a total revenue above 1 million are expected to have completed an independent audit. Charities with a revenue between 500K and $1 million are expected to have completed a formal audit review or compilation. So not an independent audit. And then if you are less than 500,000 in revenue, it's not applicable. So we do scale it based on size. And I would again encourage you guys to go to our methodology page, which is easy to find off of charitynavigator.org, and look at all the details. But we are still requiring an audit, particularly for those, an independent audit for those with revenues above $1 million.
Thanks, Laura. Let's see, here's another question. You have answered this question, but just as a reminder, the person is asking, where is the pandemic response survey?
So when you log into the portal, it will be under the finance and accountability section of the portal.
Okay, this question is an impact and results related question. My program is not listed on your list. It was listed under the current system. How do I get my program on your program list? Not sure if you follow that.
I'll give it a try. So if you go to the nonprofit portal, there is a drop-down menu that lists all of the programs for which we currently have a methodology. And then if your program type is on that list, you can enter the nonprofit portal, and then there will be a few more qualifying questions to make sure that your organization fits the criteria for that methodology. There is a place to request a methodology, and I will note that designing these methodologies takes quite a bit of analyst time. So everyone who requests a methodology isn't going to have a methodology, you know, within weeks or months. We are working on curating a list of program areas, a prioritized list of program areas, and once we have a semi-final version of that list, we'll make it transparent on our website so you can have better understanding if we will be developing a methodology for your program area, you know, sometime in the near future. I will also mention that we're a small team working on a limited budget, as I'm sure everyone on this webinar is familiar with. And we are working really hard to be creative and come up with some ideas to get to scale on impact ratings, because we realize that, you know, everyone wants to be rated on impact, and currently most organizations are not eligible. So please stay tuned. We are firm believers in transparency, and when we develop new methodologies, we'll make sure that we let our nonprofit organizations know.
Thanks, Leah. Okay, here's another question. And this may also be for you too, Leah, and you may have answered it in a variety of ways, but putting it back here, do you have an estimated date when other nonprofit sectors will be eligible? Will there be more industries added by October for the unification?
Thanks, Stacy. We are in the process of rolling out about 7 new program areas, and we will not be submitting ratings for those program areas until the March release. And again, you know, as soon as we're able to have a semi-final version of a program area priority list, we will publish that on our website.
Thank you. And not sure if anyone can answer this question. For the questionnaires, so we have the pandemic response as well as the surveys or questionnaires that are posted in Candid for leadership and adaptability and the culture and community beacon. How often do these questionnaires need to be completed?
I can take the first swipe at that. Right now, again, those questionnaires would need to be completed in advance of the upcoming ratings release. But as we move forward, we are likely to move to a more regular cadence to update those assessments. So, but again, I think much like Leah mentioned, as we will be what I call noisy about methodology changes, we'll make sure to be in communication around when the upcoming deadlines are for uploading new information or updating your present information. So I would say stay tuned for it, but there will be a more regular cadence moving forward, moving into 2023. I don't know if Laura or others or Leah wanted to enlarge upon that point at all.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, here's another question. My organization is currently excluded from the Finance and Accountability Beacon, and we have not yet received an Impact and Results Beacon. However, we have received the Leadership and Adaptability and Culture and Community Beacons. According to your website, we are not eligible for an overall rating. When will that change soon?
This is a really good question that applies to a lot of Encompass rated organizations. One of the requirements for rating is that you have 3 e-filed 990s. And so this implies to me, I'm guessing that you're a fairly new organization, or you have filed your last 990, e-filed 990 since our last update. So that's the criteria, is once we have 3 990s e-filed, we can then create an F&A score, and that is a requirement to get an overall rating. You're still findable on our site, you just don't get the overall rating. So hopefully that answers your question.
And just looking back to see what, oh, here's another question. Okay, this is a bit of a heavy one, and so it has to do with the overhead myth. I understand the need for some kind of tool to measure effectiveness. That said, I want to know what Charity Navigator is doing to educate donors about the overhead myth. And it's, this person says, I believe Charity Navigator wrote about the efforts in this regard. Nonprofits are businesses, as you know. I'm wondering what you are doing to help move the needle to help donors make impact in a way that is more informed. And I don't know who wants to take that, or if all 3 of you want to chime in.
I'll take this. I'm really glad you raised this. And I think, to be honest, the Encompass system is our approach to educate, right? So we're now saying F&A is one finance and accountability, of which includes the program expense ratio, which is one of 7 metrics within finance and accountability, is just one piece of nonprofit effectiveness. And our weighting even communicates that what we really think is important is your impact at the end of the day. So this whole shift is really a more positive approach to de-emphasize overhead. That's sort of the broad thing. That being said, we've been trying to communicate the same thing as you have, because we know how the donors have really kind of grabbed on to that idea. And so we're working ourselves to kind of say, like, no, there's a lot of other things to look at. Here are some other things. Here's our thing, look at impact, look at culture and community, look at leadership and adaptability. More specifically, I do want to share that in the new Encompass system review of all 4 beacons, the program expense ratio is less than 2% of the overall score. So that alone sends a signal. And for history, I believe when Charity Navigator was launched 20 years ago, it was 40%. So that's a huge sort of shift in prioritization. The other thing is we've shifted. It used to be just higher was always better in the way olden days. Now we just say you pass at 75 and you don't get 75% program expense ratio, and you being at 85 program expense ratio doesn't help you anymore. So we've made a lot of shifts to signal to donors that this is less important, that there's a lot of other things to work on. We're going to continue to beat that drum, and so that you are able to tell your story in a more holistic way. And I really hope that you'll help us in this task by leveraging your rating and highlighting some other aspects of your rating that shows that, you have strong culture and community, you have a good impact score, et cetera, because that will also help. I think it will take a collective effort to re-educate the American public, and we're well on our way on what they should be thinking about when evaluating nonprofits. I hope that helps. I want you to know we're with you. on this, and that's the whole basis for the Encompass system.
So I'm going to ask this question because it appears that there is perhaps still a little bit of confusion. The question is, when are you moving to just a star rating for all nonprofits?
In October.
Okay. And so let's see, because we still have a few minutes. Here's a question. We've recently completed those items, meaning the questionnaires in Candid. Will our beacon be reviewed and updated in October automatically, or do we need to request it?
I'm happy to say that we will run those data in early September. So if you've already done so, you will not have to request for us to review it. We get those data in from Candid, and we will have a preview period where you will be able to see the score that you can anticipate, particularly for the, since you're talking about Candid, in this case for constituent feedback and DEI, if you've completed those two, you will have a chance to see that before they go public. But no, there's nothing further you need to do, and thank you for filling it out. Our engineering team will go ahead and run those numbers and have them available for you in advance of the October release.
Okay, and let's see what questions we have here. Okay, will Charity Navigator, so we've, if those of you on this broadcast may be aware that there have been delays by the IRS in order for us to make updates to the Form 990 information. So the question is, will Charity Navigator fix the issue regarding timeliness in terms of receiving the Form 990s with the IRS?
Yeah, it's a really hot issue, and it's something like I'm spending a lot of my time on trying to figure out. A lot of you might have 990s from like 2019, which if you've got, you would have filled out a pandemic response, maybe that helps you. But for some of you have improved, you feel like you'd have an improved score if you had more timely data. So we are working on this on a number of fronts. The main being is that in the portal later in September, you'll actually be able to submit your 990 to us, and we'll be able to use that to hopefully update your score. We're also looking at different ways to get that 990 data. So historically, we haven't taken 990s directly from nonprofits. That is a policy we're changing in light of this delay, and now we're just kind of trying to figure out the technological issues in order to do this. As you can imagine, if you guys all sent us our 990 in PDFs, we probably couldn't handle 200,000 PDFs. So we're trying to figure out an efficient way that updates your score if you feel like you're being harmed by these delays.
Thanks, Laura. And so we're getting close to time, and the questions have slowed down considerably. But I'll do the last two. Here's a question. How does the rating work if you only have one beacon when October comes around?
That beacon becomes your full score. So it gets weighted at 100%. So if that's not the story you want to tell about your culture and community work and your leadership and adaptability work, we really encourage you to go in and fill out the other beacons. Just sort of circling back to the question about the overhead myth, that's also how having complete scores on many nonprofits is another way we're all going to train our donor base that there's more to look at. So I would really encourage you to do your best to get the Candid profile and the LNA information complete, so you've got that sort of well-rounded story you can share, and impacting results if you're eligible.
And if I could just quickly add, at this time we are not failing folks for a lack of practices, so it really would be additive to your scores to go ahead and completely fill out how we listen and the equity strategies. So just one last plug for those.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Bilal. Okay, squeezing in another question. How likely will the submission of data lower your organization score?
I don't know if I can give you a percentage. I would say, I think in the case of leadership and adaptability, it can more or less only help you. I think you can go on there and you can probably calculate for yourself in advance. Impact and results is a little bit trickier, but all of the methodologies are on our website. So that's sort of an answer that you can answer yourself and decide if it will benefit for you. So that's why I really, really strongly just spend 20 minutes looking at those methodologies in relation to your nonprofit to see what that might mean.
Thanks, Laura. And then, so the last question isn't really a question, but kind of like a request to kind of go through the where to submit information and dates. And so what we're going to do now is just kind of go back to some information that we shared earlier. If you happen to have missed this, Laura, if you can.
Yep. Crystal, can you go back to the date slide real quick? Okay, so this is a little tricky. In October, we're going to release our brand new website with those new unified ratings and update ratings of nonprofits for data there is to be updated. Does that make sense? So if we've got new data on you, you're going to see that published on the website in October, at the end of October. That's what we're saying that. So you have until now, between now and October 3rd, to give us any data that you want to have reflected in that late October website publishing. So that's why we're really encouraging you to do it today. That's about 6 weeks away, to go in, create a portal, which we'll shift to that in a second, and provide us, fill out all the different beacons. So can you go to the next slide, maybe? Next slide. One more. Yeah. So the portal is charitynavigator.org/portal, and maybe you can put that in the chat, Crystal or Stacy. And so log in today, submit your leadership and adaptability information, your pandemic response information, your impact and results data if you're eligible. Take the link from Candid. Go to Candid and complete your profile there, particularly the demographics and how you listen section. And if you do that by October 3rd, that data will be used to update whatever your rating will be, and that's what you'll see when the new website and the new ratings is launched at the end of October. I wish I could see the face of the person who asked that question, so let's see if it's clear. Hopefully that's crystal clear. We'll try to put more resources on our website that outlines that pretty clearly. I think, yeah, see, I think that's a good place to end. Thank you very, very much, everyone who hung in there for the better part of an hour. I hope you found this useful. Please reach out if you still have additional questions. And please log into the portal so that we can work together to bolster your ratings. Thanks again and have a great day.